is time for another Maize and Blue Reviews. Good afternoon, Michigan football. This time we welcome you into July. We turn the calendar. It'll be an exciting thing. It's inevitable, the change. And if you are a big college football fan, Michigan football fan, you get that much closer to the season. And, off we go. And thanks for joining us as we'll talk about the latest in Michigan football and what's going on. I have looked at Alex Orji today, the presumptive starter for Michigan at quarterback. And anytime you'll hear anyone talk about the upcoming season and preview Michigan's 2024 season, they'll start with the quarterback Alex Orji and how he is going to do. I have put together, I think there's 10, maybe 11 predictions on the numbers that Alex Orji will produce this year. We'll see where you're at with him. I didn't bounce this off anyone else. I put my thinking cap on, analyzed how I thought it would play out, and I put the numbers out there. So I'll see how I do. You might think I'm full of it. You might think, boy, man, this guy's spot on. Usually that's not how it works. We'll start with recruiting, though. Usually when you put together a list or you're projecting, it's made for something, and somebody will look at it and say, no. And I'll take it if that's the way it ends up going down. Now, we do start with recruiting, and it's really what June and July has been about. In June, Michigan came back with a force in recruiting and picked up a ton of verbal commitments. And they've got let's just get into it. They've got a number of different players that they could secure commitments for this month. And we know some of them, and there's, you're sitting here and they could come from out of bounds and somewhere than places people aren't talking about them. I say that, and it's a good example of what happened this weekend. Julius Holly commits to Michigan, a defensive end. He liked Texas A&M, Ole Miss, Georgia, and he picks Michigan. This is a very nice pickup for Sharon Moore and company. Michigan has done an excellent job with edge players, and that's where Holly looks like he fits in. And considering that Georgia was in on him and he's from the Peach State, just for that, I like that Michigan was able to pull Holly, considering that the Texas A&M and Ole Miss, teams that like to throw around their weight when it comes to NIL. I think that's good news for Michigan. So nothing but good news being able to get Holly, but Holly was really not on the radar, my radar anyways. He might have been on your radar. Obviously, he was on Michigan's radar, and they're able to get his commitment. So that's some good news, but that one kind of came out of nowhere to me. Now, you want to keep up on the latest and what's going on with Michigan and recruiting and the preview for the upcoming season in college football. You want to know what's going on the hardwood as well with Dusty May. Well, and then you want to have a conversation yourself all day, all night with like-minded Michigan fans. Well, we've got just a place for you. We've got it right here. These folks are waiting around for you to join the club. It's the Maize and Blue Review. They're real ones over there at MBR. Go to michigan.rivals.com and join up. We'll see you over there. That's where I am, talking with Michigan fans throughout the week. And I look forward to seeing you over there. Just like look forward to seeing you here today on this Good Afternoon Michigan Football Pod. So yeah, Michigan with a dozen commitments right now. And I looked at Rivals team rankings. I think 21 is where they sit right now. But would it surprise me if Michigan was finished in the top 10? Top 15? I think it'd be disappointed if they weren't in the top 15. somewhere between 10 and 15. You might be disappointed about that, but you might be all right about that. I do think you could be a little disappointed considering Michigan won the national championship this year, and you feel like there'd be a bump in recruiting. I was thinking that way myself, but if they get to 10, how much am I really going to be able to, complain about that? Maybe just a little bit, but Holly comes on the heels of a linebacker and Taylor, a wide receiver in Washington, a running back in DJ Donovan Johnson, and then being able to pull Caden Strayhorn and really smash Michigan State fans' dreams of getting something going for the future. The prospects don't look very good this year. So, leaning on recruiting and Jonathan Smith, and then this just smashes that to smithereens. You probably like that if you're a Michigan fan. Just being able to just take Michigan State down. Sure. And then here are the other commitments that Michigan has for the 2025 class. There it is. I'll get to some of the guys. Just look at a preview of July and what I think can be on tap for Michigan when it comes to who could be number 13, 14, 15 up there. That's what we're looking at. Here's OS jumping in. Big Dog is talking about, let's not be too surprised if this offense is more explosive than last year with Orji behind center. I would say that I would be surprised if this offense was more explosive. Michigan had, when you consider the offensive line that they had, when they had a top 10 pick at quarterback, they had Blake Corum, one of the greatest players in their, I don't have to recap all of the dynamic players that they had on offense. So I would be surprised, not to mention that Michigan's playing a much tougher schedule this year. So yeah, I would be surprised if the offense is more explosive. I would not be surprised if the defense was as stingy as they were last year and really kept Michigan in games and led the way. At the end of a lot of Michigan games this year, Michigan prevails. You come back and say, man, it's really nice to have that defense. It's really nice to have the kind of star players that Michigan has on defense. Michigan has a lot of difference makers on defense. That's where I think that this thing is, headed. But yeah, I would be surprised if this offense is more explosive than last year, Big Dog. Wait, what are we talking about last year for the numbers? I'd have to go back. Michigan had a top 5 offense last year in all of college football. So yeah, I would be surprised. You're talking about it being explosive, more explosive than last year. They would be, what are they going to have, the number 1 offense, top 3 offense in all of college football? Yes, that would be a little bit of a surprise, Big Dog. I like, you talking about it. Rico is with me when it comes to, it's exciting. The one thing I was going to say I don't like it, but we're all having conversations about Michigan here. People can have their opinion, and people are getting excited about the upcoming season. Like this guy, all this, and just because I might not agree with some of the wording or what you're thinking about it doesn't mean I'm think you're crazy or something like that. Here's Scott asking the question about how many defending national champs finish outside the top 10 recruiting the next season. Not many. Well, I would agree with that, Scott. Not many, if any, at all. I don't think so. When you think about the teams that win the national championship, most of those teams in the previous 4 or 5 years were number 1 in recruiting, and they're almost always in the top 5 in recruiting. And I wouldn't see them just completely falling off. So that would be an aberration. It is also it's different now in college football. Everything is different in college football. College football has changed drastically, and most importantly, the addition of the transfer portal And NIL has really, changed how things. You don't have to have. It used to be previous to like 2 or 3 years ago. You said, yeah, you just have to have a number one recruiting class, or you're just not going to win a national championship. And then Michigan was like, no, you don't have to necessarily have a number one, even a top 5 recruiting class. You can be outside the top 10. Like how many teams have won a national championship with a 4 or 5 year composite like what Michigan had? And what they were outside the top 10 over the last 4 or 5 years. So yeah, so Michigan's they're continuing if they end up outside the top 10 of what they have been doing. You might not like that. I don't really like that myself. I would like Michigan to be top 5 in recruiting, but this is the way they're doing things. This is how they are operating, and it has been working. So, like you got to give them a little bit of slack when it comes down to that. Big Dog is talking defense. He's fired up about the defense. Will Johnson, no joke. Linebackers will be out of their mind this year. I'm with you. Oh, hold the phones. Wait a second, folks. It's Hadley has joined us on the feedback. It very rarely happens, and here he is. He says he thinks the quarterback race will come down to Orji and Tuttle. And if Tuttle can get up to speed, I think he can get the starting job. But it's good to have some decent quarterbacks as a backup. Hadley, I think that if Orji is not the starting quarterback for all of the Michigan games this year, that Michigan could be in trouble. They might not get to the 10 wins. I'm projecting them to get to double-digit wins. I don't think they're going to get the double-digit wins if it's not going to be Alex Orji. Now, that's just me. And I don't know, but there's a lot of uncertainty with the quarterback position, even with Orji. Like, you could make a case that there could be a different quarterback by the Arkansas State game. I'm not making that case. You could make that case, but you could make as much of a case for, you're making the case for Tuttle. I could make as much of a case. I think it would be Davis Warren who would be the first quarterback in. Now, Tuttle was the backup last year, but he hurt his arm, whatever it was. I think it was his elbow, and him coming back from that, maybe he'll be good to go, and he's 100% now. But he did miss spring ball. I think Warren would be quarterback too. Now, the season's not starting this Saturday, but in 2 months, I would think that it would be Warren. And I don't know. So I don't know where Tuttle fits in there. And that is yet to be determined. We're all just guessing on that. Who's going to do the best in summer phase? Who's going to win that job in a fall ball? I don't think it would be a good story for Michigan if Tuttle won the starting job. Nothing against Tuttle. That would be great for Jack, obviously, but that would not be good news for Alex Orji, who is the undisputed leader and starting quarterback coming out of spring ball. To lose the job for a guy that didn't go through spring would be not ideal, at least where I'm sitting and talking about it. Valiant looked it up, and he says Michigan had the number 13 offense last year. I'll buy that. Heading in, I think that if we went back, and you can do it, but at one point late in the season, they were top 5. So what happened? They scored 24 against Penn State, 31 against Maryland, but then 30 against Ohio State, and they dropped. I don't know. I don't have the numbers in front of me. Valiant Victor, but Victor, let's go ahead and check those numbers again. Where are you looking at? I mean, you're just looking at yardage. I look at Valiant. Here's the thing that I'm looking at. I look at points per game. And so you might be looking at yards, and you also might be bringing in the group of 5. I look at points per game, and I look at the previous Power Five. There's not 5 powers anymore, as there's only 4. So, but I would look to last year and points per game, and I would think that Michigan would be 5. But hey, you know, that's just me talking off the top of my head. That's all I can do right now. James is saying that the D will keep us in the early games while the O finds itself. Yeah, I'll buy that line. I think Michigan's offense is a work in progress, and meanwhile, the defense should be rock solid. So I am right with you on that. Roland is rolling with Orji being the leader in rushing and quarterback rushing touchdowns by the end of the year. Bet. When you say bet, I have to think that I don't. There might be. There probably is offshore accounts. The traditional gambling sites, they don't have over and under on every single number that I put out there for Orji. I don't know if they have any like over and unders for all the different things that I put up there with Alex Orji. But will there be someone out there where you could bet that Orji would be the leading rusher as a quarterback in the country? I'm not sure about that. Rushing touchdowns. Alex Orji, are we talking about leading the country? Will be the leader in rushing and quarterback rushing touchdowns by the end of the year. Are we talking about just Michigan, the Big Ten? Are we talking about all of college football? You're putting down bet here. Valiant talking about not many national champions have their whole coaching staff leave either. Valiant going back to the 2021 season, saying that Michigan was top 10. There you go, JP. Talking about America's team, Michigan. You start talking quarterback, you get cut from a different cloth, thinking that Davis Warren is going to be the starting quarterback. Yeah, look, the projections, you may believe that. You may have watched the spring game and been down on Alex Orji, so that's it. BD is asking why we are acting like this is a major quarterback competition. It's Orji's job to lose. Warren can flat out spin it. Not sure why Tuttle came back. Well, just based on, and Tuttle's not basing his, it didn't base his decision on what the fans thought on a YouTube show from Michigan fans. Tuttle came back for a 7th year because he loves playing football and to get another opportunity to play football. And his season was cut short last year. And who knows where it could take him. There is a world. Like I said, I don't like that world, but there is a world where Tuttle takes a lot of snaps and, he wouldn't really come out of nowhere. Like I said, he was the backup last year. Stranger things had happened, but that's the spot you are at. There's, Big Dog, are you wondering why somebody who has never really had a shot and might believe that he could play the position of quarterback at the college level, and he would have an opportunity at a place like Michigan, possibility if he played well, and then wants to continue his career, whether it be playing football or coaching football? You're not sure? Come on now. I am sure that he wants to play college because he loves it. Imagine what most of the people who have ever strapped on a helmet and snapped their chin strap up would give to go out there one more time and play the game that we all love. Woo, man. You don't know why he came back? I don't like this, Scott. Sorry. Scott thinks Michigan plays 2 quarterbacks this season. I think there'll be, when the game is over against Fresno, I think, with 5 or 6 minutes left, that you'll see a backup quarterback. And I'll be very interested to see who comes in first against Fresno. I think Orji is going to be the only quarterback that plays against Texas. But, maybe Michigan blows them out and puts somebody else in there. John is calling Orji ceiling Milrow, which is fine for 1 year. The magic number we think is 62 completion percent in the pass game, given his running ability. John, is a very good jumping off point to where I'm going. And let's get to that right there, because it is an excellent jumping off point. First, let's look at a little bit more recruiting for July as we sit here. There is breaking news today with Watts, the offensive lineman that I did have a forecast in for Michigan. Hardy Watts, early this afternoon, has decided that he is going to Madison. So you can scratch him off your list. Andrew Olesh is a tight end that is interested in Michigan. And he is making a decision coming up here in July. And it's Michigan and Alabama. Somebody wanted to make a case earlier. I was looking at them on the Maize and Blue review for Florida. I don't know. That was maybe somebody knew something. I don't know. But there can be secret teams that jump back in there that we're not thinking about. But if it is a two-team race right now, I don't like to say it's 50-50, but it's about that. I would lean putting Michigan in front 55-45 on Bama. And Alabama, considering that Michigan took them down last year, and that not having Nick Saban, that it could also be a factor there at Alabama. It's just the automatic. Prior to where the NIL is at right now, and prior to to Nick Saban being on the sideline with him not being anymore, I would think, Alabama's going to take that one. I don't think so. I like Michigan's chances with Olesh, especially when you consider how Michigan uses their tight ends and how the tight ends are doing in the NFL and what it looks like how Michigan's going to continue to use the tight end. If I'm a tight end, I'm going to Michigan. So I would put Olesh in Michigan in a great spot. Now, I would recommend that you don't either lose sleep over Michigan when it's a 50-50 situation. You're in on guys. You never know, what the factors are and someone ending up at the last second or the last week going somewhere. You wish them well and move on. The point is that Michigan is in on these guys, and they'll win some of those. And they'll get some that come out of nowhere like Holly, and then they'll lose some that you were kind of really keying in on. Hell, out of the 12 guys that they have right now, there's a chance that they could lose one or two of those guys when it comes down to signing day. You don't like to think about that, but of course that they're going to flip a couple guys as well. And they'll probably flip more than they lose. I would bet that right now. Sitting here today, if you wanted to, if somebody would take that bet, I wouldn't get even money. But if you wanted to give me even money, I'd say that Michigan flips more players than loses players that they have as commitments right now. That seems like a safe bet. Wright is also Philip Wright, wide receiver out of Louisiana. He is favoring Michigan, and Michigan looks like they're in a good spot. He is making a decision coming up this month. Is it the 11th? Is Olesh the 8th and Wright the 11th? I wrote that down. Why don't I go ahead, instead of just trying to work off my memory, why don't I just go ahead and look at it, since I did write it down. I got a lot of pictures of my dog here. Let's see. I was close. Olesh the 8th. He is set to make his decision. An announcement between Michigan and Alabama, as far as I know right now. And then Wright, Philip Wright III, the 13th, not the 11th. Michigan, Georgia, Baylor, and Georgia Tech. So there it is. Maxwell Roy, who everyone wanted, it looks like he's more of an Ohio State guy. Michigan, it almost seems like it's a done deal. Watts is a done deal. Babaloa continues. You have this big tackle people want. I think any of those kids out of that Vegas school, the gigantic tackle there, the 5-star, sure, I'll take him. But Babaloa, if you could just tell me, go ahead, you can have Babaloa right now, I'd take him. Looks like a Michigan and Stanford type battle there. And then a few more. Archie, a linebacker. Michigan, I believe, has a 30% chance. Rutgers, a 30% chance. Clemson, a 30% chance. And then there's Marco Jones, who Michigan is battling for his services with Texas A&M, Texas, and USC. That's going to be a tough one. I don't know. I don't think that Michigan, if you're asking me, do I think they're a leader? I would say no, but they're in the mix. And, like we say about things that are in the mix, things can change when it comes down to that. All right. Here's Scott just asking the question, who is better, Warren or Tuttle? Well, we have seen Tuttle in an actual game situations, and Tuttle was beaten out by Penix when he was at Indiana, and beaten out by JJ McCarthy when he was at Michigan. So he has been he's older, and he has more game experience. If you look, he actually has. Warren has no game experience, and we've seen him in the spring game. He's got an arm, and he's got some speed, and he battled leukemia when he was in high school and had to go through the COVID and get lost in the shuffle in recruiting. So, a little bit, I would say, wild card when it comes down to Warren. But I think Warren, if I had to say, but I could be wrong. I'm not sitting here. Anybody, even if it's you, pounding any kind of table, unless they have been down to practice. Now you could say, well, I've talked to a guy who talks to a guy that's been to practice. Okay, you can play that game. My insider, I'll just say that I think it's Davis Warren. So I don't know. I don't know how many people that actually have watched practice are doing any pounding of tables about who's better there or not. Davis talking about giving up on Orji before he has taken snaps. Not me. AJ, how do you guys come away from the spring game acting like Orji has the quarterback position in the bag? Davis Warren looked way better. Davis Warren let a 55-yard pass fly, and he looked fabulous throwing that ball. Oh, man, he looked good throwing that. But other than that, did I come away from the spring game saying that Davis Warren, how did you put it, looked way better? No, I did not come away. He threw the best pass of the day. There's no doubt about that. And, Orji was a little shaky with some of his throws. So that's how I looked at it. That's why we talk about it so much. People can't be shocked. People can't be shocked that people don't trust any of the quarterbacks on the roster because they've all proven nothing. Good job, Rico. I'm with you on that. Okay, let's get to the predictions. With all of that being said, a reminder that John was talking about, he's talking about completion percentage, and he's saying that check down Cade got to 64% and couldn't run. So he thinks if Orji gets to 62%, he will be the guy. Now, I looked at these numbers that I made the predictions on, and I looked at some other quarterbacks that were first-time starters, and I looked at their numbers. I looked at what kind of game Alex Orji has. I put it together. I did do some, I got the calculator out on some of the, I moved the calculus around. I had the, they call that abacus, and I was all these different things that I was doing to go through to get to where we're at right now. Alex Orji predictions. And that's where we start. Number 10 in your guide, and maybe number 1 in your heart. The first prediction before I get to that, it's a reminder. There's a picture of Orji, and he is running in the field house. And I have a little small picture of Jalen Hurts, who I compare Alex Orji to. And Hurts it looks like he's squatting here. He's got like 1,000 plates on the side. When it comes down to weightlifting, when it comes down to the measurables, it comes down to the explosiveness, all of these things. Alex Orji is a monster. I think, this is the part that Michigan may have I don't know, it's a sleeping monster, sleeping giant. They might have a monster that they're getting ready to unleash at the quarterback position. And Hurts, to me, is the comp. When I watch Jalen Hurts play quarterback, even as a true freshman, when he played for Alabama, I'm like, he doesn't really look like a quarterback. He look like a hybrid between a safety and a linebacker playing quarterback. Very smooth, just strong. And, ultimately went to Oklahoma, and what Lincoln Riley was able to do with him in the passing game. And then, he was really amazing. Not last year. I think it was his knee that gave him the setback. But the year before, he went to the Super Bowl. I think that Alex Orji, he reminds me a lot of the quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles, Jalen Hurts. Michigan keeps their key performance indicators. They keep a book on it all the time. Every time Orji comes in to work out, he is raising the bar when it comes down to his performance indicator. So much so that Michigan, in a room full of alphas, of dogs, of workout monsters, Orji's the best, number one at quarterback. That's not a small thing. The other thing we go back to is somebody already mentioned him, Jalen Milroe, and Jim Harbaugh last year prior to the Rose Bowl said, when he was talking about Milroe, he's like a real polished Alex Orji. The athletic skill set, the playmaking ability, just the ability to extend plays. Orji a little bit bigger than Milroe. Oh, I know, a real polished. How much polishing from last year during Rose Bowl practice? And he had already had 12 games, his 13 games under his belt prior to that Orji, has got 14 games to make up. I think that's where he's going to get his polishing, but he's got that athletic skill set, playmaking ability, the ability to extend plays. Those are all the things that we're looking at. So we have already been on here talking about it. People are like, no, I think it's going to be Davis Warren. Hey, don't sleep on Jack Tuttle. Michigan will play two quarterbacks. This is the first thing that you have to do is make your prediction. How many games is Alex Orji going to play? How many is he going to start out of the 12 regular season games? My prediction is 12. I think he's going to start all of them. I think Alex Orji is going to come in, and I don't think he's going to get benched. I don't think Michigan is going to play two quarterbacks, not in any kind of rotation type situation. I think it's Orji. He's the presumptive starter coming out of spring. You may have watched the spring game already. I saw people on the feedback saying, hey, I like him in the spring. He's going to be the guy. I would put my money on number 10 being the starter against Fresno. I would put my money, if you were opening a book saying who will be Michigan's starter against Ohio State, the odds-on favorite, Alex Orji. I have Orji starting all 12 games. This is the one where, I don't know why there's a 5 there. Orji's completion percentage. A random 5 showing up here. I don't like that. John had mentioned that he thought the key number was 62%. I think that Orji is going to be a little lower than 62%. I think they are going to throw a lot of checkdowns. I think he is going to throw a lot of, there's such thing as design checkdowns. No, but There are screens, there are very completable passes that you're just taking a look, whether they're crossing routes, whether they're just throwing it out to the wide receivers as screens, throwing it out to running backs, hitting the tight ends coming across the field as we saw during the spring game. I think you're going to see a lot of that. I think that Orji is going to struggle pushing the ball down the field and hitting passes. John called Cade, check down Charlie here. I would say that's not doing Cade. That's a little bit of not necessarily doing him dirty, but that's not doing him justice. Go back and watch the Ohio State game in 21. You know what Cade did? He got back there, fired the ball down the field, and hit Kojo in stride. It was a great pass. This is not the check down Charlie, but I'll put Orji at 59%. And I would agree if he's getting over 60, boy, we're not talking about 1%. You might look at that and say, I don't like 59%. I could understand that. You'd feel better if it would be 65. That's for sure. But that's where I have the second prediction, 59%. All right, average number of passes per game. You got to remember this. Michigan is a running team. Michigan is coming out of their coach. Whenever he tweets smash. The coach who was the offensive coordinator and the head coach during Penn State famously ran the ball 32 straight times against Penn State. Against the number one scoring D. I know Victor will check me and say, no, they were like number 6 scoring D. Number 1 scoring D heading into that game. 32 straight runs. Michigan is a running team. They're not a classic drop back, even with Orji. They will have some RPOs, obviously, but will Alex Orji have a game where he throws the ball more than 25 times? Maybe not. So my prediction, average number of passes per game for Alex Orji. My prediction, 18. 18. And before you shrug your nose or anything at any of this, you look, I do, to the start of the Big Ten season last year for the champs and for the number 2 pick who was in his second year starting in J.J. McCarthy. J.J. McCarthy threw 21 times against Rutgers in the Big Ten opener. He threw 16 times against Nebraska. He threw 20 times against Minnesota. That's their first 3 games. He threw 17 times against Indiana. So if you're over here thinking that this is way too low of a number, J.J. McCarthy was lower than that after 4 Big Ten games. So, and Alex Orji is not J.J. McCarthy. Alex Orji is going to run the ball more than J.J. McCarthy did. I don't think he's going to throw the ball as much as J.J. McCarthy. So that's where I sit when it comes down to it. I will look some of your feedback here at the end, see where you're thinking. You might think, well, that's a crazy number. I knew that completion percentage. I know John will have something to say about the completion percentage number because he didn't like it even before I put it up there. And then I went under 60%. So here we are. Average number of passes per game for Orji, 18. That's where I sit. Let's look at the next number. Alex Orji predictions, average passing yards per game. So how many yards per game is Orji going to have? Looking down at some of the feedback. I like I don't know if I've seen Victor before, but he's hot. He's coming in hot on all the feedback. He says he gives me Anthony Richardson vibes. I don't know if that's good or bad, for Victor. I understand what you're saying. AR-15 is even bigger than Alex Orji. And I recall the first time, who did they play? Utah. I watched Anthony Richardson the first time just sitting down, enjoying football, watching Florida and Utah, and Richardson looked like a combination of Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. I mean, he was spectacular. Oh, smooth runner, could launch the ball 70 yards in the air. He was great. And then he had some games where he wasn't so hot and everything else after that. But look at how he played against the Colts. He had the 2 injuries. I think people in Indianapolis are pretty high on what Richardson, when it just comes down to physical tools, what did Harbaugh call it? An athletic skill set. Anthony Richardson has, he's even bigger than Orji, bigger than Milroe. He's in the pros. That's why he went as high as he did, and why the Colts are as excited about him. What do they say about Richardson? They can just stay healthy. So I'm going to say that this is a good comparison. Not really sure that's what I can't tell. That's how I feel about. That's how I'm laughing. That's how I feel like where I'm at with Orji. Let's see. I like some of this prediction stuff. People are already jumping in. Courtney says, instead of pinning it down, I asked average passing yards per game, 185 to 200. Borge is saying 200. There you go. Good to see you, Victor. Yeah, I'm with you. Good comparison. What I predicted, average passing yard per game for Orji, 190. So yeah, here we are. Me and Court are sitting there almost right in the middle there, Court. I was thinking kind of the same thing. 190 per for Orji when it comes to passing. Rushing attempts per game. There are going to be some design runs, certainly, for Orji. Does he get the double figures? Is Alex Orji going to have more than 10 carries a game? 5 carries? 6? Between 5 and 10? More than that? Think about it. I don't like this, Mark. Again, every time somebody comes up, talks about starting different quarterbacks, I say that's not good news. It could happen. Of course, we're all just making our predictions and everything else. Here's Courtney again, making his prediction. 8 to 12. My prediction, Orji, rushing attempts per game. 12. A little bit on the high side. I would have guessed. I thought I put 10 in there. 12 per game. That is a lot, isn't it, Courtney? Scott not necessarily seeing it right there. At least, Victor getting on the same page, at least 10. So maybe 12. Board's going to the high side, even 15. I do think that Orji is going to be running the ball. What I have seen from him is that he is this is what we know. This is what I don't say I know for sure, but I do know for sure. He can run. I mean, he can run. You saw him when they put him in there against Ohio State. You saw him a couple other times that he went in there and ran the ball. The other team knew he was going to run the ball, and he ran it, and he ran it effectively. I can remember the first spring game that he was out there. They tried tackling him. He did the tackling. He did the forearm shiver. He had a little, he didn't take like Derrick Henry and stiff arm the guy, but he kind of forearmed. Was at this last spring game where he forearmed a guy, and that guy went backwards and he fell forward. The first spring game, it was a 4th and short, and they had caught him right at the line. It was going to depend on the spot. But you know what Orji did? He kind of squatted down and they just kind of blasted forward. This guy is a strong runner. Or sleep, as much as you might be like, I say cringe, probably not. Tense up a little bit when he threw the ball in the spring game, like, woo, cringe maybe be the word. It's that, but in a positive way when you see him run. A special runner. If I had to make a prediction off the board of the predictions I have there. I think the Philly special, the Philly push, the Philly shove, the you know Alex Orji sneaking the ball in short yardage situations down at the goal line. Obviously, he is going to be like Jalen Hurts. Now, I don't know. It's going to be Greg Crippen, I believe, is going to be the center. What Crippen and Orji will do is, that's the combination. But Michigan, their offensive line, like the Eagles, I think the Lions have a better offensive line now than the Eagles, but the Eagles are in the top three. And they get that wedge. They do it already. They do it everywhere on the field at any time. They'll have that wedge. Boy, Orji and the wedge. I think Michigan's going for it a lot this year. And all teams are going for it more than they have the year before. And Michigan went for it more than teams, I think, on average last year. Michigan's going to be going for it a lot more. And it's like the Eagles. When the Eagles get into a situation when it's 3rd and 6, they'll just run the ball because they know if they get to a 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, or 4th and 2, 4th and 3, they'll just run it with Hurts. I think Michigan's going to do that this year with Orji. You're going to get a lot more plays, another set of downs, extending a series with Orji from what he is able to do with his legs. Well, if he can just get that passing game down, we'll see how that plays out. But right here, I have Orji. If we're going back, if you're just joining us, rushing attempts per game, I have 12. All right, total passing yards and total rushing yards. Put it together. I came up with 2,280 passing yards for Alex Orji for 12 games, 540 rushing yards, putting it all together. Those are the numbers. Now, you might say that those are really modest, and you'd say, no, you'd go for more for rushing. You'd go maybe a little bit more passing. Sure. The things that I factored in, I do look at Michigan's schedule and the teams that they're playing, and then first-time quarterbacks, and really, and sometimes when you're the quarterback, you take off and run, and that ends up, maybe ends up negatively, not a quarterback sack, because that doesn't work against your rushing yards, but it does when it comes down to your rushing yards if you're taking off there. So, but those are the numbers. If there was a bookmaker that said, I need to get an over and under on passing and rushing yards for 12 games, this is what I would send them after my look today on it. So there it is. 2,208 passing yards, 540 rushing yards. How many touchdowns is Orji going to throw? How many is he going to run? Will he rush for more touchdowns than he will throw? Scott is pretty high on it. 12 parries, yeah. I mean, remember, you're not, it doesn't mean you're, and they don't have a lot of easy games in there. So what I came down to with passing and rushing touchdowns, I've got 11 rushing touchdowns. I think he's going to be good there. And 17 TDs passing. I think that I looked at JJ's. I think JJ only had in his first year starting in 22. Now I took off, I know he didn't start the first game, but he did play that first game. He had to split time with Cade. Actually, he did in that second game too, but I don't think JJ had 20 passing yards or 20 passing touchdowns in his first year starting. So you might think like this is a low number, but not that low. Milroe, I think, had 12 rushing touchdowns last year. So just on the TDs, if you're feeling like that's not really good, it's comparable. It's close. And so that's the numbers that I came up with. Let's see. Did I have any more predictions? I don't. I'm just going to whip through them for those. Do it quick. For those that might be just joining us, here's how I looked at it with the predictions. Game started for Orji. I think he's going to start all 12. I think his completion percentage will be 59%. I know that's a little bit on the low side for people. They don't like that one. Average number of passes per game, 18. Average passing yards per game, 190 for Alex Orji. Rushing attempts per game, 12. And rushing attempts per game, 12. Total passing yards, total rushing yards, 2,280, 540. Now, you might add up if I have him for 190 through 12 games. If you get your calculator out and you're saying, hey, that doesn't add up, you could double check me and say, hey, you got that number wrong. And I would take that. I did try to make it where it was going to work out altogether, but if I miss it, I miss it. Passing and rushing TD, 17 passing, 11 rushing, and that's where I ended up. Let's get back to some of the feedback here. We'll rip some off to see where people are at. Rashad jumped in and said at this stage of Orji's development, he'll take 190 yards passing per game. Yeah, look, remember, I think that Michigan is going to win 10 games this year. So I think they're going to get to double digits. So I think they can do it with Orji getting to these numbers that I have. You might be somebody that never considers, and I see this, like you don't think Michigan's going to lose a game this year. You don't think Michigan's going to lose a game this year, then you're going to bump up those numbers from Alex Orji. And you think Alex Orji is going to win the Heisman, you're going to have to put bigger numbers on there. You think Alex Orji's, the next Lamar Jackson and Anthony Richardson combined, so you go and, bump his numbers up. There you go. Rico going off the top of his head or just knows that JJ averaged 4.26 yards per game last year. Mark saying that Orji 30 total pass plus rush 4-quarter games. Orji 30 total pass plus rush 4-quarter games. All right. Don, all that is going to matter is his misses or bad throws that lead to interceptions or turnovers. Don, thanks so much for joining us today. It is a great point. If we just go to that Texas game, does Alex Orji have to throw for 190 yards? Does he have to, rush for 50 yards? Does he have to rush for it? No. That's going to be the number one thing for Alex Orji. He does need to take care of the ball, predicting how many turnovers he's going to have, not turning the ball over in big spots and big games. Don, thank you. I feel like I should have put that up there, or at least I should have said, look, all of these numbers being said, Orji's got to protect the football. And if he does that with Michigan's defense, then the Wolverines are going to make the college football playoff. Good job. So there we go. Dave, all these things were said about JJ before his first year. Somebody talking about an RJ Moten transfer from that hit. Oh, you're talking about the spring game going back. Orji is a powerful, athletic man, and we are going to benefit much from it. This is why the written word most times is better than the spoken word. First of all, the written word carries more weight because it's there forever. You can go back and look at it, but precise writing, you like to be able to do that when you're talking. But look at Borge. Powerful, athletic, and Michigan is going to benefit from it. Everybody's on their game today on the feedback. Courtney is talking about running a power spread like with Cam, with Auburn, or Tebow with Florida. He could have 2,800 passing, 1,100 rushing, 20 plus passing TDs, and 10 plus rushing TDs, and a 62% pass completion. Yeah, 28 seems a little high for me, but the rest of this, 1,100 rushing sounds. These numbers sound really high to me. 17 passing, I was there. Plus, I've got the rushing TDs in there. Seems a little high. Michigan's not running. They're going to run the ball too much for Alex Orji to throw for 2,800 yards, I think. But that's me. Scott not talking about Orji. He's talking about Donovan Edwards carrying the ball 15 times a day. Game. Orji 8. Mullings 8. Others 5. All right, because I have Orji at 12, so I'm a little bit different than him. JJ, according to Johnny, averaged 199 a game last year. Are you talking passing? You're talking about combination? 199, and I'm talking 190? Dave is saying he's a big, sturdy guy. That's a good sign. The thing about JJ, and I don't know, did you clip it after 12 games, or are you including Iowa? Are you including Alabama? Are you including the national championship game? And if you're just including the 12 games, and then you have the Penn State game, which he didn't have very good numbers in, and then you go to, and he only threw the ball 13 times and had three picks against BG. Yeah, also, good thing to remember, Michigan went undefeated, and against Bowling Green, McCarthy threw the ball 13 times and had 3 interceptions. So it would be nice if it was all smooth sailing for Orji. Just gets in there against Fresno. Woo! No rough waters, but there is going to be somewhere. But like has been indicated, I believe it was Don said, protecting the ball. And then when you do have the wobbly game, that if you get picked up by your teammates and you're still able to win that's going to be a big deal. So it could all happen out there. That's it. Is Samaj Morgan as good as Roman Wilson? I'm going to say no at this point right now, but Roman Wilson was a special wide receiver, and he was right out of the gate. Now, he was great last year, but I was thinking about Roman Wilson when Michigan went to Penn State in 21. Who was the guy that was catching the 2 touchdowns against Penn State in 21? It was Roman Wilson. I mean, Roman Wilson is, if Roman Wilson was a special receiver, Morgan, just as a freshman, if he could get to where Roman Wilson is at, then that would be a great thing. But having said that, Morgan was better than Wilson as a freshman. So what am I talking about, right? Morgan, a better returner, a better runner. Wilson, a better pass catcher, as we sit here right now. Tush push. I know I was calling it all kinds of an orgy up. Alex, an AO shot. We'll have to work on that. Michigan mash, smash with Orji. I don't know. Going through there. Rico says he could live with 3 losses this season. I could too, Rico. If 2 of them, if one of them was against Oregon and one of them was against Ohio State, and then Michigan beat Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game, and then a third loss was like in the college football semifinal. I know that's kind of tweaking. You're talking about 3 in the regular season. Yeah, you could live with that. I don't want to live with 3 losses. I could live with 2 because 3, you're not going to make the college football playoff. And if I'm setting a bar for Michigan heading into this season, I'm saying that it's going to be a successful season for Michigan if they make the college football playoff. That has been a good year. And and Michigan football is rolling now. There's all kinds, as we know, different ways that you can say, well, what about this, what about that? But as we head into the season and we start July off, if Michigan can make the college football playoff, it's been a good year. If they have 3 losses in the regular season, they're not going to get into the college football playoff likely. So then I'm going to say that I can't live with it. I have to, but I'm not saying it's a good season. I don't want to live with not a good season. OT. He worries people get all gushy and big eyed about Orji and his running ability, like they did with Joe Milton and his cannon arm, and they overlook a steady Eddie like Davis Warren. Joe Milton, who was it that wrote it? I guess it doesn't matter who it was. But I think they had gone on a trip to Italy, and it was like one of the Michelangelo statues. The writer had seen Milton. I don't know if it was. I think he had a shirt off. I guess is what it was, and basically it was like he's like a Roman statue. He's in literally Milton. You look at Joe Milton at 6'5", and he's cut out of granite. And then you watch him throw the ball 80 yards. Anybody that's ever watched Joe Milton throw the football he takes your breath away. I mean, he still does. So you're worried that people, are thinking about it. I don't know, Orgy's big and strong, and I still right. It's about playing the position and everything else, but I don't know about steady Eddie. I don't know if Davis Warren is. I don't think Davis Warren is steady Eddie. He threw a 50-yard pass, 55-yard pass in the spring game that was picture perfect. I mean, it's something that we could sit around and gush about. And that was awesome. But what about Davis Warren the year before in the spring game? I mean, he looked like a turnover machine. So there was no steady Eddie. There was one great pass from Davis Warren. That's where I'm at with it. Let's see if we have more. Dave Morgan is different than Roman. Victor, 28 total TDs will be more than JJ had last year. Ooh, look at that. Well, he's the quarterback. Should I took it down? Let's see. Edwards goes for 1,200 according to Scott. Leo says maybe MSU should go to the MAC. They might get bowl eligible if they did that. Borge likes the ability of Sharon Moore and Kirk Campbell to put Orji in the best positions to succeed. Orji's no JJ. Johnny says, I like we're just kind of just going through it. Orji doesn't have to be JJ. Let's see. No, he isn't, but at the same time, these things were said what JJ did was run as a freshman. All of that is true. Let's see if we go through some of these. Some of these. What's this mean? Do we win the flip? Mark. I don't know what that means, but Mark was saying, what is the first tone setting play in the Texas Michigan game? Big offense or defensive play by whom? Okay. Whoever wins the flip. That's what Dave's saying. Let me think about that. Since Michigan's defense is going to lead the way this year, and in the first game, you feel, or the first big game, second game, I would say that it would be Michigan's defense. or just not throwing for 20 TDs. I don't think he's going to throw for 20 either. I'm with you on that. So there we are. So there are the numbers that I'm putting up there. Do we have any? Chris is agreeing with me. If Michigan makes the playoff, it's a good season. There you go. You don't deserve to get in with 3 losses. But if everyone, yeah, no, I feel pretty comfortable unless the 3 losses is a situation where you have 2 and you get into the Big Ten champ. Let's say you could play the game. If Michigan lost to Texas and lost to Oregon, there were 2 losses, and then they beat Ohio State but got into the Big Ten championship game, and then they had 3, or let's say they lost to Texas, Oregon, and Ohio State. Could they get into the Big Ten championship? Maybe. And then they won that one. They would still have 3 losses. Well, they're getting in because you get the automatic bid. So, but I think that the 3 losses where you'd get in somehow would be having 2, and then you lose the Big Ten championship game, and that would be your 3rd one. I think it would play out. I mean, how much do we start? October 1st, you start talking about, oh, and this team's going to be in. Oh, you're going to get 3 losses, So, I mean, we talked about 2 losses all the time when it was a 4-team playoff. So, yeah, I think we're going to be talking a lot about 3-loss teams and all of that. Let's see. Les, your bar is low with Orji, but high to make a playoff run. I don't get it. Yeah, I don't think my bar is low with Orji. I think that what you might be looking for, and I don't blame you, Les, and you could be right. The quarterback position at Michigan in the numbers, it's not everything. It's going to be more about, as somebody mentioned, not turning the ball over, but it's going to be more about the running game and how the offensive line comes out and how they are able to push the other team off the ball and and protect Orji. Orji does not have to be the focal point of this offense. So while you say the bar is low, I'm saying it's a manageable season playing to the defense and playing to a running game. That's where I'm at. So that's the part where you say you don't get it, I'm trying to explain. The other thing is that if the last 2 years, if it was just J.J. McCarthy, I feel like I would feel different about Michigan's chances with Orji. And I think as a group, Michigan fans don't give Cade McNamara as much credit as he deserves in 2021. Having said all of that, it's not like Cade McNamara came out there, was kicking ass and taking names in every single game that he played in 21. And Michigan was able to get to the college football playoff. Michigan was able to beat Ohio State. They did it on the backs of their offensive line and their running game. And Cade was a manager, and he managed the game well, and they were able to win the Big Ten with Cade McNamara. And I think that they can do that with Orji. So that's the part also that played into it. But look, I understand where you're coming from. And I'm not down. I mean, I picked him to start all 12 games. So I'm not really down on Orji at all. Loring says, all this speculation, we really won't know until game 1. Well, here's how it works. I will sit here 3 times a week all the way till the last day, until the opener on August 31st. And I will speculate, and so will you, and then everybody will speculate, and everybody's got the numbers, and then once the season starts, all of it gets thrown out the window. Everything that everybody said, and even the predictions. I know, like I'm sitting here predicting Michigan at 10-2. Whatever you pick Michigan at, if they beat Texas, it's going to change how you look at the rest of the season. And I think that Michigan will lose 2 games, and I picked the Oregon and Ohio State game. But if Michigan beats Fresno, Texas, Arkansas State, USC, Minnesota, Washington, they'll be 6-0. At Illinois, Michigan State, they'll be 8-0 hosting Oregon. I don't know what Oregon, is Oregon going to lose a game? Am I really going to be sitting here with Michigan being 8-0 hosting Oregon and saying, well, guys, I picked Michigan to go 10-2, so I'm just going to pick them to, I'm going to have, depends on what I see out there. It's just likely losses that go into it. trying to have some fun. No, I don't. I don't know who's going to lose 3 games. I don't know who's going to win 2. It's all a little bit of a speculation and all of that. Scott says Penny, 50, and likes Jack Tuttle at quarterback. That's my goat. Penny likes she likes hay and grain and leaves, and she doesn't. I think Penny's more of an Alex Orji goat, to tell you the truth. She is very friendly. Should like any of them. Anybody that came up to her that shows her some attention. All right, so that's going to do it here for today's show. Somebody mentioned Jim Scarcelli. He will join us on Wednesday, and we'll see where Scar's at. What happens in the world of college football until then? Thanks for participating. Somebody talking recruiting here. Oh, I'd like to end it on somebody talking Marco Jones. That was always going to be a tough one. This you're going to have to get to work flipping him. That'll do it. Everybody have a great day. So long. Smash that like button.